Benjamin Franklin once said, "The bitterness of poor quality remains long after the sweetness of low price is forgotten." The fact is, quality matters. Join us as we make quality fun, interesting, and accessible to companies of all levels. Quality Matters is a must listen for all things quality. Listen in, ask questions, and get back to doing what matters most. Quality Matters, brought to you by Texas Quality Assurance, where quality management gets simplified.
Well, hello and welcome back to the Quality Matters podcast. I'm Kyle Chambers with Texas Quality Assurance, and Caleb's going to be joining us again today, but we also have another guest on the podcast today, Chris Paris from Oxebridge Resources, and we've had Chris on several times before. Just really great person to get to know. He's got just a lot of background with working with these multiple different standards, and it has some good understanding of kind of the development of these standards and the processes that it goes through. So today we're going to be discussing some of the recent possible additions as well as recent amendment to the ISO 9001 standard. So with that, Caleb, Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
All right.
Hello there.
Well, Chris, tell us a little bit about this amendment that just came out, and how soon is it going to actually impact folks?
Hold on a second. I brought props.
I love it.
That's perfect.
I just
want everybody to know that I'm not only smart,
you're sophisticated.
Drunk. So I got that going for me as well. No, I'm not drunk.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, talking about some of this stuff, sometimes you do need a drink to get through it.
True that.
Well, one of these days, I'm gonna pop it open, but the day ain't come yet.
There you go. Yeah, so this new standard is likely. I mean, we've seen an amendment come out. It's a rare thing. It's the first time they've ever done this for ISO 9001. That came out.
I was gonna say, I don't ever remember them doing this.
Yeah, they called the 2008 edition an amendment. Now they changed the definition of an amendment, so I don't know. Now this new thing is an amendment. And then, but they're busy working on a full rewrite of the standard. Or it's not full rewrite, but it's going to be a significant amount of new content that's put in there. And I think we expect that to come out at the end of 2025, maybe 2026. But the rate they're going very fast, I think it's going to be 2025. We'll see that.
Gotcha.
Cool.
That'll be fun. It'll be a lot of fun. Yeah. I think probably the only folks who are rooting for it are big consultation shops.
There's some misguided small consultants. I wrote an article about this, is that the consultants don't seem to know their clients are the people who buy standard and buy audits. Their client is not ISO. I don't understand why the consultants are out there supporting ISO in their controversial moves and then alienating their clients. The clients are not happy with what's happening. That's where consultants like us, we need to pay attention to that and represent.
Well,
that.
Give me a link to that article. I want to make sure we include that in the show notes here. I saw something on it on LinkedIn, but kind of fill me in more, because really, this is something that I hate the revisions to the standard. Yes, I know it's a wonderful opportunity for me to make more money, but it's also a wonderful opportunity for our customers to go through a lot of hell and us to have to rewrite everything as well. It's more work for me that I don't want.
Well, they're just making it. They're going to make it at some point where it's impossible for clients and companies to comply with it because there's so much stuff they're adding. And so then it just becomes a thing that people say they do. They pay for an audit. The audits become scams. They get and it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing now. We really need to reverse that trend, but no sign of that happening. ISO's got its agenda, and we're just along for the ride.
It's a shame. So, look, I was on the TC 176 for a while, and I was the new guy on it. I knew I didn't have much of a say, much of a vote. To be honest, I didn't have a lot of time to devote to it either. But when I started reading all these documents talking about global warming and introducing, agile methodology to design and development and some other kind of really goofy sounding stuff, I just said, screw it. I'm out. I got far better things to do than listen to all this. So how soon is this amendment supposed to take effect?
As far as I can tell, the amendment is in effect immediately.
Okay.
It's already in effect, meaning that if you have a surveillance audit or whatever your next audit is coming up, the certification body auditors are under orders to check that And actually did just see a memo come out from Perry Johnson registrars today saying, in fact, that they're going to be checking this at their next audit.
Yeah.
So, and specifically with related to climate change, what they're going to be asking is they're going to be asking senior management, have you considered climate change, and prove that you did? You got to show some kind of evidence, a record or something. They're not going to judge whether or not, well, if you've decided climate change is not into your quality system, they're not supposed to challenge you on that. But you have to prove that you determined it either is or is not an issue in your quality management system.
So this might be as much work as like proving what an exclusion.
Yeah, no, it's not that. It's not going to be like proving exclusion. But I mean, what they want to see, they don't want to say it, but they want to see entries in your risk register or something, some record that says we thought about climate change and we don't feel it's relevant, and we moved on. But what they will write up in nonconformity is that they can't find evidence that you even considered it, which is a stretch. It should not be a nonconformity, but that's the position of the certification bodies and the accreditation bodies.
Oh man,
what's the point? I mean, what's gained from that? I mean, it almost sounds like a gimmick. Like they're just saying we address, we're on board with climate change and we're doing our part. I mean, is there any other besides risk management of say like rising oceans or something like that? I mean, what do they gain from that? So
you asked the right question. This whole thing has been done because the United Nations released a few years ago 17 Sustainable Development Goals. They're called the SDGs, which sounds like something you'd catch in a brothel, but an SDG. And ISO picked one of them, climate change, to hang their hat on. And the reason they did this is that they couldn't possibly do all 17. I want to show you something too. Let me switch over. I brought evidence here.
Let me know here. Give me just a second. Oh, good. You got it up on your screen.
You should be able to see it. Yeah.
Let me see here. Sorry.
There we
go. Hey, look at me and learn how to use this stuff.
Yeah, we're all figuring it out. So this is an actual memo from 2023, TC 176. You can see that right here, TC 176, right? And it says here, please find the attached letter which has been circulated to all technical committees in relation to ISO standards in support of action on climate change. And what they did was this actually references an earlier study from I think 2022 maybe, which I have somewhere. I couldn't find it before this thing. But anyway, they actually addressed how many or which standards would be affected by climate change. And here they are. And so they, for example, ISO 609, ISO 2306, all of these standards, ISO 9459, solar energy. Okay. And what you find is that this was a study they did to see which of the standards really needed what they call priority standards, standards proposed for revision for the climate action. And what we find in this annex, ISO 9001 is not listed anywhere in this study. So they published this, and then I'll switch off of that now. Let's see here. They published this, and ISO, the head of ISO said, no, we're going to put it in everything. And the reason we're doing that, he doesn't want to say this, but the ISO Secretary General, a Chilean from Chile, whose name is Sergio Mojica, wants to become the United Nations Secretary General. His term limits for ISO run out in 2026 or so, right at the time when the UN will be holding elections for the UN Secretary General. So this whole thing is about making him look good before the United Nations. So then again, I'll come back to the UN has 17 SDGs. Some of the other SDGs it has, for example, are global hunger, universal health care, slavery, anti-slavery, not pro-slavery, anti-human trafficking. Why then did ISO not include all of those in ISO 9? Why just this one? Because ISO and this guy, Sergio, is trying to take a bite that he can manage, a little bite, to make it look like they care about the environment, when in fact ISO does not care about the environment. If ISO cared about the environment, they would have canceled all world travel. You can actually develop a standard on Zoom. You don't need to be flying all around the world.
Yeah.
So another thing is, now his opponents can't say to him, well, how did you use your previous platform to address climate change? Now he's like, well,
no,
I
you could
did all
spin
of it.
this
So
all sorts of fun ways.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
The
that
problem
makes a little
is
bit
that
of
we're
sense.
likely to see he's opened the floodgates, and now we have other people in TC 176 that are thinking about adding some of this other stuff in there. And in the aerospace industry, we're seeing that already. They're adding quality of work life, personnel safety, meaning occupational health and safety, in a quality system standard. So they've opened the floodgates, and now these unqualified people are just going to add everything. They're talking about gender equality. And all of these issues are really important, but you make them cheap if you just throw them into off-topic standards. So no one's going to care about quality. About climate change now if it's just because it becomes cheap and it's obvious it's a trick.
It's lip service.
It's lip service. It's going to have the opposite effect. It's actually going to hurt the climate, not help it. But this guy's just looking to get his job at the United Nations. He's not going to get it, by the way. He has no chance at all. So this entire thing has been a tremendous waste of time.
Like, this just makes me sick at my stomach, because I like the clear delineation between the standards. Yes, you could bleed into health and safety from quality, right? And I've been on an external audit where that was happening. I went on site and there's a dude lifting a forklift with another forklift. It's nice on 9001 audit, but I still had to say, like, time out. This can't happen. So, but still, like, there are lines, and I still didn't even leave that as a finding on the report. I just told the guys, if you don't fix it, I ain't going to finish auditing you. But like, there's lines, and you really don't need to cross them, because that's not the scope of the standard. And like, it just makes me sick, because so many.
What makes us qualified on the subject matter of climate change or gender equality, or what's in the standard now? There's a note now in the 2015 version against discrimination. Are any of us lawyers that can identify discrimination or do anything about it if we see it? Of course not.
No.
So we're not qualified, and we never will be qualified, because you need to go to school and study these things for many, many years. And now auditors are just going to be overnight experts, and consultants are going to pretend they're experts on these subjects that they never had any training on.
Yeah.
And it makes things worse, not better.
No, absolutely. And that's part of where I've struggled with, because I need to make a recommendation to my clients of how they ought to address this amendment. And it's like, okay, well, I can give my personal opinion, but like, how do we really draft this to where someone could fill in what they and their company actually cares about? But then I actually have to ask a better question. Why the heck should they care about it for their ISO 9001 audit? And I just feel like a hypocrite even telling them to do it.
Well, and you're going to see a lot more worker safety stuff getting into these in the ISO 9000 standard, which is a problem, because we have ISO 45000 for occupational health and safety. So ISO is cannibalizing its own product, but they're so dumb, they don't know how to sell stuff that they don't realize that. Eventually, they'll be like, why do I need to buy ISO 45000 if I have 9000?
Yeah, well,
that's a valid question.
You know, one of the things I will say that I did like about the 2015 edition is when they put in, not granted, there's a fine line of what I like here, but the requirement for identification of legal requirements is a requirement, right? So if you've got certain legal requirements that are applicable to your quality management system, you need to note them. Same thing on health and safety, because in the 2008 edition, they had the legal requirements, but it wasn't in an auditable clause. But this just takes it so much further, and it just I'm fearful that this is opening floodgates for all sorts of crap, that you're talking about, and a lot more that, I can just kind of start to speculate on, but I don't know.
Well, the other problem that we have, it's related, and it's interesting, is that ISO is moving towards a subscription model for its standards. In other words, you will pay, sort of like you might do with Microsoft Office now, you'll pay an annual subscription to access ISO 9001. And as soon as you don't pay, you don't have access anymore.
And its most updated version.
Yeah. And they intend to update it per their own quotes. I think they said in real time. No, updated constantly. So that means, I don't know how they're going to be voting, because voting means that you can't update it constantly. You have to pause and take a vote. But I think they're going to do away with voting. So somebody could just go in and update ISO 9001, and it would be live the next day or the next hour. That means that they're going to have adding anything they want. And so you might be compliant on Monday, and then you'd be non-compliant by Tuesday. And ISO does not have an answer for this. I've asked them directly. I asked the head of this, they call it ISO Smart standards. I asked the head of the committee, and she has no answer for that. She
ISO
doesn't know what they're going to do. They have rules on voting and voting stages, and they're doing away with all of that. And we see that with the ISO 9001, the 2015 version. At least about a third of that text was never voted on because it was provided by ISO, the headquarters, and then the TC 176 was actually prohibited. They could vote on it. Yeah, you're up or down, but you couldn't edit it. So that's a problem. And now with the new climate change, there was the climate change issue. There was no vote. That was just an amendment they published without any kind of voting. And this violates all the principles of ISO standards development and the regulations under the World Trade Organization. ISO is not allowed to do any of this, but no one's holding them accountable.
So, Chris, let me ask you this. What's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back as far as, you know, the ISO 9001 monopoly, or, you know, everybody using that as the standard, short of API or whatever? But I mean, when do you see a mutiny or a backlash?
Well, I think we've seen it before. Every time they release a new version, less organizations adopt it. The numbers go down, and the exception is you have China and maybe a little bit of India inflating the numbers artificially. We know the certificates coming out of China are fake, but so long as the number is higher than last year, ISO could say it's more popular. They don't want to dig in and say, oh, it's just China offsetting the fact that other countries like Europe and the United States and the Americas are dropping it. So I don't know. I guess the point when China finally stops adopting it, maybe ISO will pay attention, but they don't really have any reason to, so long as they sell one more standard than they did last year, that they're okay. But I think this is going to be a huge thing that breaks the camel's back this year.
You wrote an article on that one a little while back as well, didn't you?
I've written about it.
Yeah. So I want a copy of that one as well for the China stuff for the show notes here. I think a lot of folks will enjoy that.
So essentially, the consultants are gonna benefit, you know, because then there's more experts that have to be hired, and well, we don't know about all these social issues, so we got to hire so and so, and you know they're gonna love it. So I guess the backlash is gonna have to come back from the manufacturers or the producers that use that standard, instead of just saying no, we don't use that. This is what we use.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's already hard enough to do consultation work because there's so much bleed over into safety and environmental a lot of times. And frequently I have to hire someone to help out with the environmental assessment or some of the health and safety stuff. I mean, thankfully, me personally, I've got enough, experience, certifications, yada, yada, that I can do most of the work myself. But man, as soon as you have to start bringing in outside folks, those costs just skyrocket. I mean, this is going to be so that a small business can't stay competitive, is my fear.
Or even to use the system. I mean, because you're going to have to charge more for all the experts you bring in, to help you out. I don't know.
Yeah, well, the AS standard, for example, is adding a whole clause on cybersecurity. So now we're going to have to, for all our AS 9100, if you're a little small 5-man machine shop, you're going to have a full cybersecurity program now. And to me as a consultant, I'm not a cybersecurity expert, so I'm going to have to hire one. So now it's a team.
Yeah.
And that's going to be much more expensive.
Yeah. It's crazy. This is why, like, literally sick feeling in my stomach, because I don't give much of a hoot about big businesses out there. I don't work with them very often. When I do, it's a one-off type thing. We work with small businesses. This type of stuff is what will cripple them. Like I already saw the impact from moving to 2008 to 2015. The average Joe could read 2008 and make sense of it. 2015, it's just word salad.
It's interesting because we published our own standard, Oxebridge Q001, and all that was intended was to take the ISO 9001 standard and put it in plain English so people could understand it. And then people started asking if they could get certified to it. So we created a certification team. Now, my company, Oxbridge, is not the certification body. We're the accreditation body. We're the top of the pyramid. But the problem is that no one's ever heard of it. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
There seems to be a new urgency now. People are writing I just got 2 or 3 emails this morning saying that we're going to have to abandon ISO and go the Oxebridge route. And again, we didn't really design it for that. It wasn't intended to be something that replaces ISO, but there's an urgency there now, and that's more based on the actual 2000 version of the standard. It still complies with the new one, but we're not going to be updating the 2000 to add the climate change. We're just not going to do it.
Yeah.
So now we've decided that we're going to deviate. It's going to branch out. And
Yep.
We're not going to be compliant with the next version of ISO 9001. And it'll be an alternative. So then companies can get certified to it. The problem is, would your customers recognize it, you know?
Right.
And until we can get, government recognition, we're trying to work with DCMA and some other folks in the DoD, maybe get some recognition, or maybe it's just going to be a mass movement. Eventually people will come to it. The standard's free, so I'm not making any money on it. You just download it.
It's just a common sense.
Do is offer some competition.
Yeah. I'm not opposed to that at all. I'm just like, we had API on recently to talk about the 10th edition of the Q1 standard. And they ISO 9000ized it very well. So if you hit Q1, it's guaranteed you hit everything in 9001.
Right.
Until the old 9000.
And honest to God, I'm wondering if that's not part of the logic in introducing climate change, because ain't no way Q1's going to do that. I mean, I don't see API opening that door.
But it'll just push people over to Q1. They're not going to die.
Yeah, that's what.
Yeah,
so API could broaden its horizons. Still be called American Petroleum Institute, but say, well, you don't even have to be petroleum. Just somebody that doesn't want all the fluff that the new ISO has. Use our standard.
So I guess there'll be options for folks in the future if this goes, haywire. But I think it's worth considering that if you're a small shop, 9001 certified, like, you may have to find someone like one of us to help you out, or you may have a lot of late nights and probably drown a couple bottles of that trying to figure it out.
There you go. That's my cue.
Oh man! So what are some of the other changes that you, again, I know none of this is confirmed or anything like that, but what are some other changes that you hear is coming down the pipe for 9001? Because I have totally detached myself from that world.
They're really struggling with this idea of risk. They know that they've bungled the understanding of risk, and there's a fight between the parties whether risk is positive or negative. And I think right now, finally, common sense is prevailing. The risk is generally negative and opportunity is positive.
Right.
But they're still having a fight. They're going to see some clarity on that. It still won't be clear. There's still some. Well, I think you mentioned the agile thing. I can't believe that they're trying to correct the clause on 8.3 on design, because the reason that we're in the muck situation where it's all mucked up right now is because they tried to appease agile, and they took waterfall model stuff and they shuffled it, and they felt that now looks like agile. And I think they realize it doesn't. So maybe I guess they're going to take a pretty heavy hand on that clause.
See, I went to school for management information. Well, I finally graduated with management information systems. I spent way the heck too long in college. And, again, you'd hear all these software developers, agile. And you actually start asking, all right, so what's this agile methodology mean? And it basically means at the end of the project, we can document it to look like we had a plan.
I just spoke to some developers recently. They said agile is already old. Now, these guys are the guys I was talking to are very young. One of them was 18, another one's in their 20s. Nobody's over 30, but they're super geniuses. And they already are laughing at the agile people. So the folks that are getting, if ISO is going to jump on the agile bandwagon now, they're probably about 5 years too late, maybe 10. Agile is already being replaced, and these kids were telling me the stuff that is replacing agile, and I don't remember it, and I don't understand it.
Yeah,
something else is out there already, and it's already a little late.
No,
but we're going to see that showing up in the new standard, I'm sure, and a lot of tinkering where they take language that was fine and they further massage it and likely make it much worse.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like you needed to go to law school anyways, just to read the standard and make sense of it. Right. So, no, I mean, I hate to have such a depressing episode, but this stuff is a little worrisome. I mean, this really is something folks need to keep an eye out on, because when the standard's released, this could cause a lot of headache for folks.
What we as responsible consultants could do, and there's only two of us, that's you and me.
Yeah.
But the best that we can offer free help on this particular problem. Let's not. At some point, our time, they have to charge for time. But I mean, I know I've done it. I think you've done it, where we give free guidance and listen. Do this to address climate change. You don't have to hire us. You don't have to do anything, and make it clear that we're not trying to be pirates. We're not trying to get rich on this like the other guys. The other folks out there are doing that.
Correct.
But there is, of course, at some point when the changes are so significant, we have to start charging for time.
Yep.
And then I guess that's when we all write another book.
That's actually something I'm trying to get put together right now. I've had one client so far ask me, what should we do about this? And all I could tell them is, I have not finalized my official stance on it. Give me till the end of the month to get it to you. Like, well, we're getting audited next month, so I need to know quick. I'm like, I know, just give me till the end of the month to get something typed up. That way I'm at least giving consistent advice to folks. But
and then you just publish that, or you hand it to your clients, and that'll get them 90% of the way, if not 100. We've done that too. We've just thrown out some free guidance on this thing. But of course, there'll be somebody out there who really does, where the quality system does overlap with climate change. Maybe they're making batteries. Maybe they're mining or something. I don't know what. And free advice won't be enough. And at which point, they're going to have to pull and you have to pay. But
for the average machine shop fabricator, I mean, it's all the same. But you're right. There are some folks that this will hit differently. So maybe final question for me, Caleb. I'm sure you probably got something else, but final one for me would be, how much should a company let their opinions on climate change seep into this, one way or the other? You got goofballs on both ends.
Any conversation we have on LinkedIn about climate change, people have very, very strong opinions. You have the people who really feel, and I feel strongly about climate change too, but I know when to talk about it and when not to talk about it, right? And this is not in my subject matter. I'm not an expert, but there are two classes of people. The ones who believe that it's very crucial and therefore everybody needs to be doing this all the time. Don't worry about feeding your children. Don't worry about sleeping. Worry about climate change. And the other camp is that this is a myth. Climate change is fake. It's a government plot. And on LinkedIn, the bulk of the people responding to my posts are that. They think this is all a big scam. I don't think it's a scam personally. I think it's a real thing. I think there's science behind it or whatever. But I also am not going to, I know when to talk about it. If we're going to have a meeting about the environment, that's when you talk about it. If we're talking about quality, it's not
probably
not.
To talk
about. And that was my question: is why did they choose climate change instead of just making it like the less polarizing, environmental or something?
There were two reasons. One, it was one of the least controversial ones, right? Of those 17 United Nations development goals. And it was also the one that they could do lip service to the easiest. ISO was not going to do anything about human trafficking. ISO is not going to do anything about ensuring that every country in the world has universal health care or universal education. There's no way they can do
child care or
and they could. And it was also ISO is very enmeshed with China. China pays a lot of lip service to environment and to climate change. Now they're one of the biggest polluters, but ISO could do this and make friends with China at the same time. They never want to do anything that upsets China. So that's a big part.
Oh man. And such a weird world. Well, any other questions or comments, Caleb?
I mean, what Kyle was saying, at what point do you not express your views? If the question is, how do you prove that your company is not affecting or affected by climate change? I mean, I guess somebody, like you were talking about, that tends to comment on your post that says, well, I don't believe it. Then it gets into that argument. Well, there is no such thing as anthropogenic climate change.
And see, I guess that's part of, because look, we work with, just a lot of average folks. And that's not to say anything negative. That's to say these are folks that tend to just want to live their life, go home, go to work. That's it. Nothing else. I get it. If they think this is bogus and bullcrap, they kind of have to assume it is real. And if they do assume it is real, they can't quite assume that the world's going to end 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, you're in a bind because you're in Texas and a lot of your clients are oil and gas, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and you do the API, which I don't do. I don't do that. I don't work in petroleum. I'll do ISO in a vague petroleum sense, but I don't have a lot of clients in it. But those are ones that are going to have those opinions, right?
Mm-hmm.
My clients, a lot of them are IT consulting companies or manufacturers making airplane parts. They don't have a strong opinion about it. But yeah, what you're doing is you're asking somebody to automatically say, you better agree with this position first.
Yeah.
And now do something about it. And how do you get the people over the hump? And some people are just going to abandon it. They believe so strongly in their position, they're going to drop ISO. And ISO does not know what's coming. They're going to lose tremendous numbers of people buying the standard, and certifications are going to drop. But they may get offset by fake numbers coming out of China. But those numbers are fake. ISO's not making any money on those fake numbers. So ISO's got to be losing money. And someone at the end of the day is going to say, hey, we made more money before this. And after this Chileno guy got in here, we lost money. Let's do something about it.
I guess maybe they're just a little late to the go woke, go broke.
Well, I mean, and that's whenever the subsidies come in and and then it just doesn't matter.
Yeah. And it is lip service. I mean, if you want to do something about climate change, the first thing you do is you cancel travel. There's no reason that people need to be flying all the way, but it's always like Barbados, Caribbean, Haiti, or Disney World, Orlando.
Yeah, right.
There's no reason to be having people fly around to sit in a room and talk about standards. They could do it on Zoom. And they save a lot of miles.
Well, that's all I got here. So be looking out. We're going to be publishing some free information. Check out Chris and Oxebridge, see what they've got available. Like, look, we're all out to make a buck. There's no doubt about that. But I think both you and I, Chris, like you say, it's like we really do care about the folks out there. Like, it pisses me off to see this stuff happen because I know how it hurts these folks. And I know, you got a small shop with 40 employees. Everyone's got 2-3 kids, a wife. Like, that's 100 people that you just screwed over. And that crap just pisses me off. So I'm going to have to end it before I get on my soapbox. Whoops. Hit the wrong button there. Threw my pen down and hit a button on the mouse.
No, I don't think it did anything.
Oh, man. Well, Chris, thank you again for coming on. You got any final thoughts or anything you want to share with the world here?
I had no initial thoughts, so I don't have any final thoughts either. There's nothing happening up here.
That'll work. We'll talk to you soon. I appreciate it, guys. All right.
Take care.
So that's it for today. I'll make sure that we get links to lots of stuff in the show notes here from the new amendment. And then, of course, as soon as we release our official recommendation, we'll go ahead and let you know on that as well. But that's all we got. So if you haven't already, please like, subscribe wherever you listen. If you're listening on like iTunes, Spotify, be sure to check out the YouTube channel because you can obviously see everything we're sharing. Lots of good information. So with that, y'all have a great day. We'll hope to see you soon.
Are we done?
All right. Hit end recording.
In the outtakes.